Judy, it's 6:30. Do you want to wait for Felice?
Yeah, Barry's trying to give her a call now.
Sounds great.
She's coming on now. And then will you please do your thing? Or if
I'll
Kevin,
let Kevin, but
Kevin,
then
if you do it tonight.
Yeah, I can do it.
and I just want to let you know that we have our council member Julie Minnan, who's also here.
Okay, but I don't see Rebecca.
I saw her name, but it could have been her staffer.
No, she said she was going to attend.
I think. Yeah, there she is. Just had to expand my screen. She's
Okay.
there.
Okay, I'll let you, we'll start with the electeds and if they can be brief, and then we'll go to the commissioner. Okay, but
right.
let's just wait for Felice to join us.
While we wait for Felice, do you want Kevin to give the
Sure, go
Yeah,
ahead, Kevin.
sure.
And welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, welcome everyone. If this is your first time joining us, everyone will remain muted throughout the meeting except for the committee co-chairs. That's Judy and Felice, as well as the presenters. Following the presentation, the co-chairs will call on members of the public wishing to speak. You can participate by going to the reactions icon, pressing raise hand, not the wave or the thumbs up. Only press it once. If you press it a second time, your hand will go back down, okay? If you are on the phone, it is *9 to raise hand and *6 to unmute. Be on the lookout for a prompt asking you to confirm unmuting once the co-chairs call on you. The chat is for technical support only to help with Zoom software problems, not to ask questions of co-chairs. They will not see the chats. If you have an older version of Zoom, you will need to go to the participants section where you will find the raise hand feature there. Please do not raise your actual hand or wave at the screen because we may not be able to see you. Chat me or Will, we're here for support. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. I'm Judy Schneider. I'm co-chair of the Parks Committee, along with Felice Farber. Felice?
Hi, I'm Felice Farber, the other co-chair of the Parks Committee.
And I want to apologize in advance. I have a cough, so at times I may mute myself. We have two elected officials with us. I know they're going to be brief because we also have the Parks Commissioner, Anthony Perez, with us to talk about pickleball, our first item. And so I'm going to call on Assembly Member Rebecca Seawright and give her a few minutes to speak.
Thank you, Judy, and thank you, Felice. And Felice, congratulations on your new position. And I see our council member, Julie Minnan, on. It's great to see you. I've just returned from Albany, where we're negotiating the state budget. The speaker appointed me most recently as chair of the People with Disabilities Committee, and I attended my first adaptive sports wheelchair women's basketball game. That's a CUNY team, one of only 7 in the nation. And it was fascinating to see them play. We hosted a rally and a press conference yesterday in Albany for higher education funding, calling on $15 million in the state budget for people with disabilities in the higher education field. But I wanted to join you tonight because I'm an avid pickleball player. My whole family is, and it's a great treat when I get to play with my kids and my spouse. In the fall, my office hosted a pickleball clinic and wellness fair, and I want to thank again the Commissioner Perez for attending that. And I understand that the commissioner was in both Carl Schurz Park and John Jay Park today. So I'm looking forward to your announcements and your update, but mostly want to thank you, Commissioner, for your service as our commissioner and for what you're doing to increase pickleball courts around the city and really listening to the community and balancing the needs of everyone's interests in the park, from hockey to basketball to children pushing around fire trucks. And so thank you. And just want to invite everyone to stop by our office at York Avenue and 79th Street. We're still giving out free COVID tests and free masks, and a housing clinic we host twice a month. So have a good meeting this evening. Thank you. And thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Rebecca. Now we'll hear from Julie Menon.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Judy. And thank you, Judy and Felice, for hosting this important meeting. And it's wonderful to see my colleague, Assemblymember Rebecca Seawright, and our offices have been coordinating on this pickleball issue. And so I really wanted to come here to say I've heard from so many of you who are in favor of pickleball courts and have really been reaching out to both my office and the Assembly member's office to advocate for that. We have passed along all of those comments directly to Commissioner Perez, and I really want to thank him for taking the time to visit our parks to really assess the situation. We have an unusual situation in this district in that the 5th Council District actually ranks 47th out of 51 in terms of a lack of open space. So we have precious little open space, and it's so important that we utilize it in the best way possible. And so I really appreciate the Commissioner's attention to this issue and really wanted to come on tonight to just pass along all of the comments we got in favor of pickleball courts, and also the comments that we passed along to the Commissioner to look at a lot of the open spaces. So not just Carl Schurz, but to look at all of the parks, a few parks that we have in our district, to make sure that we're activating them. So I'm excited to hear the comments and feedback in the presentation tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Council Member, for attending our meeting. And now I think we'll call on Commissioner Manhattan Parks Commissioner Anthony Perez.
Hello, can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Anthony Perez, and I serve as the Manhattan Borough Commissioner for New York City Parks. I started recently, actually, in September 2022. So this is now my 5th month in the role. I'm looking forward to meeting those of you that I haven't had the pleasure of meeting just yet. And I think I see a lot of familiar faces here already, so I'm happy to see that. I'm here joined by our Chief of Staff, Steve Simon, our Chief of Recreation, Ken Conyers, our Manhattan Permits Coordinator, Orlando Tulloch, and our Parks Manager, Sheena Kaufman. And ultimately, I'm here to have an open conversation, a discussion with the community regarding pickleball here at Carl Schurz Park, and also in a larger aspect of Community Board District 8. My goal here is to get community input and to get community buy-in for next steps. I want to be proactive. We want to take a solutions-oriented approach. We want to be collaborative and inclusive of the varying perspectives. And I really want to be thoughtful about our intentions and our impact here as well. So far, I've had the pleasure of having discussions with the offices of our local elected officials, Councilmember Rebecca Seawright and Councilmember Julie Menon. I want to thank them for their kind comments and their collaboration. It's been a pleasure to work with you all in this short time. I'm looking forward to more collaboration. I've had conversations with Community Board 8 members, like Parks Committee chairs, co-chairs, Judy Snyder and Felice Farber. Thank you for having me here and inviting me for this discussion. I've also chatted with Judy Howard and Patrick McCluskey from the Carl Schurz Park Conservancy. We had lunch recently, had a long conversation about what they're hearing as well from residents and park goers. And I've also talked to leaders in the pickleball community, folks like Catherine Hedden, the Pickleball USA Manhattan ambassador, Albert, the pickleball doctor, who's usually there at Carl Schurz Park, and other folks like Amanda Johnson and Elaine and others. And of course, I've talked to residents. Everywhere I go, people will stop and say, hey, do you have 5 minutes? I got an idea, or I've got a complaint. And we're always open to hear them. So we've heard a lot from folks there, and obviously our staff too. Our staff throughout the park, day in and day out. So whether solicited or unsolicited, our folks are feedback receptacles, and they make sure to reach back out so that we're all on the same page. I figure that as a primer, it'd be helpful for me to start with a bit of an overview. Then I'll give a bit of a timeline of how we got here. I want to discuss the current conditions. I'm going to propose some changes that we think will be helpful for Carl Schurz Park. And then I want to open up the floor for comments, questions, suggestions that we should incorporate for our goal to find additional pickleball spaces outside of Carl Schurz Park to convert into pickleball courts. So as an overview, folks know pickleball is a relatively new sport. It's had a meteoric rise in popularity nationwide. There are star athletes like LeBron James and Tom Brady who have been investing in the sport and its growth. The story of the growing sport itself has been featured on CBS, on HBO, and the like. There's live games that are now being shown on sport networks like ESPN. And of course, we've seen a proliferation here in New York where everyone wants to find a place to play. And obviously, as we all know, especially Manhattan, space is very limited. But here at Parks, we're always open to any program that engages the public. We want to make sure that our parks are being used at full potential by all New Yorkers. And we want to be able to adapt to those needs as those needs change or preferences evolve. We're always trying to find new opportunities for sports and recreation programs. New Yorkers' reception of pickleball itself has been amazing. People of all ages too. It's not just young people or folks in the middle age or older or elder population. It really runs the gamut. We're trying to find more spaces. As of right now, we have over 68 courts across the city, and we're continuously trying to identify new spaces. In Manhattan, we have pickleball actively being played at Alfred E. Smith Rec Center, at Astor Levy Playground, at the Rec Center, Chelsea Rec Center, Gertrude Kelly Playground, J.J. Walker, and also William Passanante Ball Field. And there are some pickleball courts that are already in the works, that are in the pipeline. There are actually 12 that are right now currently in the pipeline. There are 5 of them coming to Riverside Park near 110th Street. There are 5 more that are going to be in Central Park in the North Meadow near 101st Street. There's one coming to Riverside Park South on 71st Street. And there's one in discussion now that's being built out for Hell's Kitchen Park on 47th Street. And we're actively having conversations with council members across the borough too, to identify potential locations that could use a capital investment for a full court renovation and conversion into dedicated pickleball courts. And like I mentioned, ultimately, our goal is to provide a balance of access between all the different sports and activities that our park visitors enjoy. Our policy is the same in terms of organized sports should only be played in designated areas. And that's really for the safety and the best interest of all park goers. So we want to find ways to ensure that park goers are able to enjoy their preferred sport and that our spaces are being shared equitably. So that balance is really what's important to us. In terms of a timeline on how we got here, in 2014, the Parks Department started engaging with pickleball, specifically at our recreation centers. So that was almost 10 years ago. It was at the request of recreation center members who wanted to find ways to include the opportunity to play pickleball indoors. And we still actually offer an introduction to the sport. We do drills, clinics, gameplay, and find opportunities to expand in our 13 recreation centers. This past spring in 2022, in a response to the growing needs and requests for more pickleball, in Manhattan Parks, we actually added 3 pickleball courts in 3 different parks. Those were at Saravalli Playground and Community Board 2, Gertrude Kelly and Community Board 4, and Passanante Ball Field, also in Community Board 2. Not all of those were as successful as others. In some cases, folks did complain, and we listened, particularly as it related to having community input before putting courts down in different parks. And that's really one of the main reasons why we're here. Before we go ahead and move on to painting new lines, we want to hear from you. We want you to hear what we're thinking. We want to get feedback. We want to make sure that everyone's voice is heard. I mentioned I started in September, and I think I don't know what the coincidence was, but that's when things were really getting tense, and there were a lot of conversations in the media and on television about pickleball all over. And so, as an agency, we put our heads together and came up with a pickleball policy, an internal policy that we implemented in November of 2022. And basically, that helps standardize our operations across the boroughs. This was happening in all 5 of our boroughs, where we're trying to find ways to adapt and evolve. In other boroughs, there was more of an issue with pickleball and tennis, because I think that was a more simple connection to find, well, tennis courts are available, let's just add pickleball courts there. But that didn't always work out. In Manhattan, it was a little more difficult because it wasn't as much an issue between pickleball players and tennis players. It was more so the pickleball players that we co-located in multi-purpose play areas. So it really became more of a parents and the neighborhood residents versus a lot of the pickleball players. But let me tell you a little bit about what that policy did, just to get a sense of what's covered and what's not. In terms of pickleball and tennis, any pickleball courts should no longer be co-located on tennis courts. And if there are currently any pickleball courts that were co-located with tennis courts, our goal is to completely reline them to either just be pickleball or just be tennis, so they'll be standalone courts. And also, even though they're separate from tennis courts, the pickleball courts may be located within the same fenced areas as tennis court. And if that's the case, a separate entrance for pickleball should be created. And we want to make sure those entrances are also ADA compliant. Again, that doesn't always apply as much to Manhattan, but we wanted to make sure that we were all approaching an expansion in the same way across different boroughs. And when it relates to multi-purpose play areas, the policy did say that the pickleball courts can be co-located on the underutilized spaces and in multi-purpose play areas and handball courts. These are spaces where we can work with the community and our staff to find and identify which places are being underutilized and where we can find ways to have this game coexist with existing usages and make sure that's not detrimental not have a detrimental effect to other usages. As pickleball relates to permits, permitted activity takes precedence over pickleball in cases where the area has a permitting system. Permits are not required to use pickleball courts, except when those courts are being used for tournaments or special events, like the one that Assemblymember Seawright had mentioned that included more of a clinic. When it comes to those permits for pickleball, no fees are charged. We want to make sure that we're consistent across our different sports and activities and not treating one sport differently than another. That policy also included specifications for measurement, for layout, for surface preparation, even the type of paint that we use to make sure that we're all using consistent materials and that we're taking into consideration safety and longevity and making sure that things are consistent across the board. Now let's talk about Carl Schurz currently. Right now, there are pickleball courts in the multi-purpose play area, which we call an MPPA, just the initials there. The space is being used for a variety of purposes. You know, there are basketball courts there. People use it for roller hockey, aerobics classes, obviously pickleball. Local schools use it for recess. Sometimes there are movie night events there. And generally, we also want to make sure that there's just open play area for children to ride their bikes or do whatever activity, kids do at their age. Right now, there are 3 what we call unofficial pickleball courts. They were not placed by the Parks Department, but by active users of the space. As they are right now, they're poorly spaced apart. Between the first and second court, I think there's 10 feet in between them. We were there this morning measuring it all out. And between the second and third court, there's almost 16 feet in between. There's a lot of dead space that's lost in between the way that they're currently laid out. But there's a very active group. There's a Carl Schurz pickleball group in the Teams Reach app, which is an app, a phone app that a lot of the pickleball players use to organize and communicate with each other. And that chat has over 1,000 members. So there's clearly a need and a want and a demand for pickleball in this area. And that leads to a lot of overcrowding too. We've heard that sometimes the wait times can be as much as an hour and a half just to get some time on the court. So we know that there's a need for finding an opportunity to accommodate this. And sometimes, unfortunately, the wait times and the high demand also leads to individuals painting additional unofficial court lines. And that's where it gets even trickier or more contentious, particularly when it comes to taking away space for children in the community. So, we've heard those complaints as well, and we've taken those into consideration. We want to make sure that we are being inclusive of the way that we're approaching this and making sure that folks have a seat at the table for this conversation. So here's the proposal that we have from taking different things into account. First and foremost, I think we have to clear up the confusion as to what's a permissible pickleball court or not. So we want to go in there. I mentioned there are 2 or 3 unofficial court lines, sometimes 4 or more. I want to go in there. We did a measurement, and I think that we can safely fit 3 official pickleball courts in less space that is currently being used now. And the way we would do that is to reduce the space in between each court to 8 feet. That way we can still have 3 courts, not reduce the current amount of courts that are being used, but also not further encroach into the open play area. In addition to that, not only keeping the same 3 courts that would be officially painted by the Parks Department, but we also want to consider moving the 3 courts that are there now to the other side of the MPPA area. So as it is right now, there's the basketball court. If your back is to the water and you're facing the whole area, the basketball court is to your right. Then immediately next to it, there are the pickleball courts, and then there's open space. Obviously, that might cause some issues with balls flying between a basketball leaving the court or a pickleball going the other way. So we think that it makes more sense to separate the 2, to have the organized sports on opposite ends. So you have basketball on one side and the 3 pickleball courts on the other side. and leaving the open space in the middle for children to play and ride their bikes and play tag or whatever it may be. And in doing so, by also reducing the space in between each court, we can actually expand that open play area. According to our measurements this morning, the existing court has about 88 to 90 feet of open space for children to play. In this new rearrangement, there'd be almost 107 feet, so almost 15 to 20 feet more for children to have to play in an open area. So second, aside from the physical reconfiguration of the space itself, we want to use the existing permitting system to make sure that we're carving out other uses. And we do that by proactively reaching out to a lot of the neighborhood groups that we know constantly use the playground. And that means the local schools, including the Braley School, the Chapin School, and the Clark Schools for Hearing and Speech. We want to make sure that we've been reaching out to them, and we've already made progress on getting them to do so. We've been requesting that they actually submit a formal permit request so that we can properly carve out time for when the schools are using it, and that we know when the area will be busier than not. And the permitting system is not something that we actually have in every park. And also that's by design. But in some community areas, the neighborhood residents are very much against having a permitting system where there's temporary exclusive usage of a particular area. But in this case, it already exists, and it works out well when it comes to blocking out time for the schools, for recess. There's a potential for another group, a hockey group, to use the courts this year as well. It's actually the blacktop street hockey. They're usually played down by Tompkins Square, but there's temporary construction work there that would mean that they would need to find another home for their league for a couple of months. And we've been working with them to identify what that might look like and what specific times they would need. And obviously, again, make sure that it's done in an organized way through the permitting system. As a subset of that, through this permitting system, we also want to purposely block out youth community time. This would be like Monday through Friday from 3 to 5 p.m. and Saturdays and Sundays from 10 to 1 p.m. that we would make sure that no one has exclusive usage of this multi-purpose play area, so that it could be open play for people in the community and not blocked out for a particular hockey league or anything, or a school or anything of the sort. Third, one of the things that we've heard a lot from a lot of the pickleball players is a want for some sort of storage ability, particularly for the nets and the paddles and the equipment that they carry. So we are open to engaging with leaders in the Carl Schurz pickleball community to enter into a storage bin agreement, which would really be more of a job box. But basically, we have a formal paperwork and agreement that they can fill out, request this document, there's insurance involved, and then they would have the key to open and close it and not have to carry around nets and paddles and other equipment and balls for their sport. With all those things aside, with rearrangement, with the permitting and the job box, the most important aspect of this proposal is the last part here, which is this discussion. We don't think that we're going to solve the problem in a vacuum in one park. I don't think the answer to addressing the increased demand is to just create more pickleball courts in that same location. I think the answer is to identify more locations in Manhattan, particularly in this context here, in Community Board 8, where we can convert existing spaces that may be underutilized into pickleball courts. So as Councilmember Menon mentioned, we don't have a lot of options. There aren't that many existing parks in the district, but there are some options to be discussed. I've heard the handball courts at John Jay Park being mentioned or suggested as an area that we should look into. Obviously, there's Carl Schurz Park. We can discuss 24 Sycamores Park. There's also the Stanley Isaacs Playground. It comes up a lot in conversation, though I'll mention that what might work best for that would be the northern side of 96th Street, which is technically Community Board 11 and under Councilmember Ayala. But I just want to mention that is in context of conversation as an area where we can look into. You have Samuel Seabury Playground, there's Asphalt Green, Rupert Park is undergoing a renovation soon that we can incorporate a discussion about this as well. But again, we want to hear from you. You know your community best. You know what areas are actually being utilized or not. And we want to take those into consideration before we move forward and actually taking action and adding more courts to the district. So that's where we're coming from. And again, we want to enter this as a discussion. We don't want to come in with a prescription already fully baked and force fed. So we're thinking that we want to have 3 courts, move them to the other side, be proactive about permitting, include a job box for storage, and actively act on finding other spaces in Community Board 8 to incorporate pickleball into.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. That was a lot of information in a very rapid period of time. Now, let me just make a comment, and Kevin, I'm gonna need your help with this because my computer doesn't allow me to see whose hands are raised. But at last look, we had 117 people on this call. So I request everybody to keep their comments brief, to the point, and if somebody has already made your statement, please do not repeat yourself again. We do not want to be here all night. Although we want to hear from everybody, we want to keep the meeting moving along, and we have other agenda items. So Kevin, can you, well, I see one hand up and I'll call on him first. Brad Hershenson, since I know who he is.
And Rita, I can help out with that as well and calling on people.
Great. Can you folks hear me?
Yes.
Great. Well, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule, Commissioner Perez, as well as our committee co-chairs, Schneider and Farber, for hosting this meeting to speak with the community. My name is Brad Hershenson. I'm a lifelong resident of the Upper East Side, and I just want to make 3 brief points tonight. One, as players of the park, of course, it's been shared that we share the space, with others who rollerblade and skate and play catch and stuff like that. And as we seek these permanent courts, I just want to make sure that we remain cognizant, and we are cognizant of the other users who play in the park. 2, I want to emphasize safety and upgrades to the space, possibly resurfacing of the cracks and other areas. There's some places where tree roots are coming up, and I just want to make sure that everybody knows that, we want to make sure we have a safe place to play. And if resurfacing is a possibility, that would be great. And then 3, we'd like to recommend that some of these other sites, for example, 96th Street at the FDR Drive that was mentioned, that's really, really underutilized. If you try to literally bounce a ball on it, the concrete is mixed with rocks, so the ball actually comes up a different direction. So it's almost impossible to play any sport at 96th Street. There's a few other places. There's some piers that are above 86th Street that I think are city-owned or Parks Department owned that could be used as well, and then a couple other places in the neighborhood. But I just wanted to make those points and really stress that we want to share the facilities. We want them to be safe for everyone, and we're all here to have a great time and play pickleball. And we hope the commissioner and the folks from the community board will join us in the spring.
Thank you, Brad. Felice, do you want to call on the rest of the people? Because my screen is somewhat limited.
Sure. Why don't we go to Elaine Reitman and Ann Matheson?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, hi. I'm Elaine Reitman. Just want to echo what Brad said. Thank you to CB8 chairs and Commissioner Perez and Rebecca Seawright and Julie Menon for being part of this meeting. I guess I just had a few questions. I guess maybe we could have a discussion the timing. I guess I was a little bit unclear about some of the hours that were, if there's any restriction on the hours for pickleball play. And I understand if there's other events or permits going on, that's totally understandable. So I didn't know if there was any sort of discussion about that by the Parks Committee. And I guess, and if there's any consideration of how the usage is in summer versus winter, because people have been playing throughout the winter as well, since we've had warmer days. So I don't know if that would allow for sort of, if there were any sort of time restrictions, those might be less so. And I think that's really all I have to say, other than, echoing what Brad had said prior to me. Thank you.
Commissioner, do you have any comments on that?
Sure. So as it stands, we currently don't permit pickleball itself. So someone wouldn't be able to request for the whole space to be dedicated just for pickleball. But what that does mean is that then those existing 3 courts that would be there would be usable at all times when a permit is not being used.
Great.
So there wouldn't be a limitation on that end. And as it stands, we don't have a plan to change the operations, whether it's spring or summer. I think there are still usages all around. You know, I was there this morning and it was cold and there were kids there. So I'm happy to hear more input about that, but no, we haven't considered changing the rules for the seasons.
Great. I just had one more question. Do you know what's happening with Central Park? Because that's something that might affect the usage this summer in Carl Schurz Park.
Yeah, so I'd have to double check, but as I understand, they're undergoing a construction to repave a lot of that area in the North Meadow. So there will be a temporary closure. I'd have to double check the timeline, but when they are done with that work, there'll be 5 dedicated pickleball courts that'll be added to Central Park there.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Rita, I hope you don't mind passing over you just to get to members of the public before community board members. Next is Ann Matheson.
Muted.
Hello?
Yeah,
Hello?
now you're unmuted.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Commissioner Perez, for spending as much time as you have. And I know you are juggling lots of different constituencies and you are doing the very best you can. I appreciate that so much. And thank you, Community Board 8, for hosting this meeting. So briefly, my first question, knowing that we aren't going to get to all the questions tonight, is what's the best way to be in touch with your office as we go forward with suggestions about pickleball?
Sure. So I can drop our information in the chat if that's allowed. I know the chat's more for technical purposes, but we have my office number. We can share that as well, and folks can email my office too. I will put that information out to make sure the community board can share that too.
Feel free to DM me that info so I can put it in chat.
Okay, I'll do that.
Thank you. Next is Sandra Jackman. And you're, yeah, now you're unmuted.
Yeah, I want to thank everybody for this opportunity. I'm a fan of pickleball. I don't play it well, but I played it. I really enjoyed it. However, I do play against the wall in John Jay Park. And there is a rumor that I heard this morning that I found rather disconcerting, that the walls will be taken down in what you term the handball courts. They're used in multi ways. They're not only used for handball. I have been out there almost every morning for the past 15 years, winter and summer, playing tennis against the wall. There's a whole group who comes periodically throughout the day playing against those walls. The children from the various schools come and play games against those walls. So if that's just a rumor, then I'm not concerned, but they should not be torn down. So that pickleball, it is a nice sized park. There are other places to utilize space. And I think that should be of concern. So is that a rumor that has just been floating?
Sure,
Or
so I can jump in. Well, I think a rumor is a weird way to put it. I would just say it was an idea that was brought up. You know, again, we've been soliciting input from a wide variety of people, but we have not made any decisions to remove any walls or to convert John Jay Park into pickleball areas. Again, we want to have the community conversation first before making decisions like that.
And Commissioner, I think we've been speaking with Steve Simon. I think somewhere in the coming months, we're going to have probably a presentation on John Jay Park. So I invite you all to watch the community board agenda and watch the items so that if you see that listed and you're interested in this, that you attend the meeting and you can give your input to it.
If I can just add, I think I mentioned this when I opened up. Of all the different options, John Jay and Stanley Isaacs come up as two of the more popular options to consider incorporating pickleball. So I'm particularly interested in hearing feedback around that as well. But of course, open to all ideas.
Thank you. Next is Gary Schechter.
Everybody hear me, I assume?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Commissioner Perez, thank you. You seem to have a very good handle on the need or the demand or the popularity of the sport in the city. And I think it's wonderful that you're looking in all these different places. Certainly those handball courts by the FDR, as Brad said. One comment on the way you are proposing putting the courts at the left end of the sports area. That's curved, right? At the end there, I believe. And that may cut into some of the spacing of the courts, number one. Number two, we will probably lose a lot of the bench space where people are sitting around waiting. And if you shift to where it currently is now, and even go to 5 or 6 feet between courts, you still could kind of leave the courts where they are, and kids and parents and families that are coming down from the far end steps go right into what's almost half of the sports area, or even more than half of that. And then my last point was, would you guys consider having or painting a couple of extra courts to be used for practice, for clinics, for training, if the area is available and not open, so that people could, if there's a group of kids coming down, that place does not get used. Kind of the way the park runs today when we play.
So on the first comment, the pickleball courts would have the same buffer that the basketball courts currently have now. They don't go all the way to the edge, and there's a buffer area there so you don't run into that wall. So we wouldn't start that first pickleball court until there's enough space in between there to make sure that nobody dives for a ball and runs into the container area there. In terms of the last one, I'll go back to your second question. In terms of your last question, honestly, no. We can't continue painting extra lines. Particularly, it impacts our ability to maintain the area. Painting anything in a park is difficult for us because we have to maintain that area. Even if we go forward with moving the existing court lines to the other side, we're probably still going to be left with ugly faded lines because of all the additional lines that were added in there. And again, it's hard to regulate too. It's hard to determine when, if John Smith feels like, oh, it's empty now, I'm going to add another court. But actually, there were a group of parents that were just ready to come up and bring their kids. So I think it would just be hard to regulate and determine when it would be an appropriate time to add courts. So I don't think that we can get into that whole aspect, and especially not if it's done with paint, because we can't maintain the constant moving and removing of these lines. It's expensive. It's materials that we have to buy. It's staff time that we're spending doing that. It's just not an efficient process for us to do.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Moving on, and I apologize because I'm sure I'm going to pronounce the next name wrong. Yang Guang. I'm sure that is incorrect, and I apologize.
Yes, that's correct. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. Actually, I've been living in the city for 12 years, but quite new to this area. And so first, again, to thanks Commissioner and then local leader. You guys, having this opportunity, give us, this presentation and all the information. And so I would really also want to thank actually the members of the John Jay Park staff. They actually did such a wonderful job and making everything in order. So I actually just want to clarify one thing that, the tennis, I actually, I'm a pickleball, paddleball, and also tennis player. I've been playing in many places in New York City. As I mentioned, I live in 12 years in New York City. And just move.
I think you have a bad connection.
New York City is not only just for areas in John Jay Park. You can add another court for pickleball, but I definitely think that those tennis areas and also the handball areas, they are the most utilized areas. I hope we can keep them.
Thank you. Next up is Joel, and then Andy Lockman.
Could you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, thank you very much. Thank you to the community board for hosting this. Thank you, Anthony, for coming down and presenting your thoughts. It's good to see so many community members here. What's a shame is we don't have any kids on this call, so we're really not hearing from them. And that's one group that I think we need to have input from. This past summer, pickleball came to Carl Schurz Court. Since the lawn courts were painted and nets were set up, pickleball has been impeding on our right to enjoy the use of the park. It's disrupted the flow of the park and the character of the park by setting up the court smack in the middle and using up lots of space between the nets. Most importantly, it has become a deterrent for kids to come and play in the park. It's a hazard, and I'm not going to say every pickleball player is nasty, but there are a group that are. And some of them are selfish. Basically, from 9 a.m. until sundown, you have 3 pickleball courts set up in the open area that's left from the basketball courts. These 3 pickleball courts currently occupy 60% of the open space left. That 60% is currently used by 12 people. You used to have 50 kids running around in that same area. That 12 adults, mostly adults, are now playing. As everybody knows, the park has been filled with kids. They play catch, kick a soccer ball, football. We've taught our kids to ride bikes there, rollerblade, skateboard, what have you. The encroachment in the middle of the park really has been the one distinguishing factor that we have seen from this year to last year, why kids are not coming in. There's no other factor why kids are not there anymore. Number 2, when I bring kids to my park, which is usually only for an hour or two, it's not a whole day. I have asked, sometimes I've come in hot, but I have asked for the courts to be taken down when the game is finished. This sometimes could go on for 15 minutes. As you said, people are waiting as long as an hour to play a game. Immediately after I leave, I'm not there anymore. The nets are going right back up. I've seen skateboarders in that area using the park, and essentially they are pushed out. Those are the people that are selfish in their use of the space. Now, pickleballers, some of them are nice, but a lot of them will give adults a hard time about moving their nets. Do you really think that kids are going to go and ask to remove court space? They're just not going to respond. Kids are not going to do it. Basic common sense is after a few times of kids coming to the park and play, and they feel limited in their space, they will look elsewhere to go and play. And this is basically what has happened to the Carl Schurz Sports Court. Number 3, it's become a hazard. There are collisions. There are people hitting each other. I've seen people wander onto the courts and adults are screaming at them. I'm sorry, but in the middle of the court, and I appreciate you, Anthony, hearing the community and understanding why it makes sense to move it to the south end of the court. Another thing, adults talking to adults is one thing, but there are some of these pickleballers that have said things to my kids about me. That's really out of bounds. That's number 1. Number 2, I have a second child. He has autism. This is the place that we have grown up. This is the place that he comes to get his movement. This is the place that he comes to get his physical space. This is the place that he has community engagement and social interaction. Now, there's a lot of nice people that play there, but the fact that our space is being eaten up and kids are not coming around, it's just not right. This is not a right environment for kids to be playing with when they're really limited in amount of space. Now, we all know that the lines were painted without authorization, and it's been left up now for 6 months. Anthony, I appreciate that you've been working through this and trying to figure it out. The issue with leaving it up for such a long period of time is this has now gotten out to so many people. There are so many sites that this is listed on as a pickleball court to play. It's unauthorized. There's only one site that took it down when they found out it was not authorized. Okay, there are these chats, and that's why we have probably out of 120 people, 110 of them are in favor of the pickleball. It's just a mass of people that's coming up. Now, if I were to say no pickleball, I will be acting in the same selfish manner as a lot of the people who come, as a number of the people who come to play. So I do appreciate you saying that there should be some courts, and I agree. They should have space to play. Everybody should be sharing the park. What I think needs to be done is just maximum of 2 courts. The maximum of 2 courts would take up the same amount of space as the basketball courts. There's no reason that one new activity that has come into the parks without authorization and just gone through a land grab is now going to be allocated over 35% of the park. It's just not the right message to send to the public. Come down, do what you want, and don't worry, we're still going to give you the 3 courts. It's just not the right message to send. So finally, I do think that 2 courts should be put up. I agree. The south side is probably the best place because you have the whole middle of the flow empty. But I do feel that even with whatever you're going to put down, there needs to be some monitoring, because there are people that will come and impede on the open space. And there will be people that even when they're not playing, they're volleying where other kids are trying to play as well. Now, they have a right to play, but the more space you're allocating towards the pickleball courts, the more space they're going to come in and impede on the open area. Finally, I feel that if you do put the 2 pickleball courts up, like we all agree that there should be, this monitoring needs to happen. And once that pickleball has impeded on the rest of the park, and they're taking advantage of more open space, as they've been doing now, shut it down. But until then, let them play. But 2 is enough. No one activity needs more space than the basketball courts. People wait to play basketball as well. I'm sure they would want more courts. Thank you,
Joel. Appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
Andy Lockman.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
First order of business, as a pickleball player, Joel, you got my apology, and I'm embarrassed that any fellow pickleball would treat you and your family in that manner. I want to thank the chairs, I want to thank the elected officials, and I especially want to thank Chairman Perez for, I'm sorry, Commissioner Perez for taking on such a contentious issue. But here's what I want to say today. When I finished playing pickleball at Carl Schurz Park, I have a tremendous smile on my face. And I have a smile on my face because of the community that Albert, the pickleball doctor, created there. And it flies in the face of what Joel says, because the people under Albert's guidance don't act that way. And he actually enacted a set of rules to make sure what's happening to Joel doesn't happen. But lo and behold, you have some lone wolves that come in and make a bad name for everybody. But here's what I want to recommend to the board here, and possibly to the chairman as well, the commissioner as well. Albert, the pickleball doctor, deserves special notification and recognition from this community for what he's done. He's built something amazing. He's transitioned that area into something special. He's gotten senior citizens who haven't exercised in years to play, who are hung up under COVID, and are finally exercising, meeting new people. In our explanation, somebody said that Carl Schurz pickleball changed their lives, and that they've met more people playing pickleball in Carl Schurz Park than all their years in New York City. So I call on this board to recognize him. I also want to say there's some people on this very call, in the effort to control what goes on in the pickleball arena, have forgotten what Albert has done. And as a result, they're ruining the community that he actually created, that good sense, that good feeling. And I say, shame on you. And I have a feeling those are the very same people that are causing Joel problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Next is Bo Holy and then Sean Bixler.
Hi, thanks, Commissioner Perez and Community Board 8. I just wanted to touch on the topic of kids. And to me, one of the great things about pickleball is the wide range of ages that can play it. So I have two boys that were born on the Upper East Side and continue to live on the Upper East Side. And my boys specifically come to Carl Schurz Park for the very purpose of playing pickleball. And I regularly see other kids playing pickleball at Carl Schurz, which I think is really great. I commend the Carl Schurz pickleball group for welcoming kids. And so thank you. Also on the topic of kids and other courts, if you were to go to the North Meadow courts, you would notice you will not see children playing there. And the reason is the group of people that manage that club have been regularly telling kids for years that they don't allow kids to play there, which I don't think that seems right. And I think is probably not in the spirit of what the public space is to be used for. And so I wanted to respectfully request from the group to consider placing signage on the North Meadow courts that children are allowed to play there, similar to signage on basketball courts in Central Park. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Luca.
Luca, you should see a prompt on your screen asking you to unmute.
You keep pressing it multiple times and you're muting yourself back. So just press it once.
Felice, maybe we can go to the next person and come back to Luca.
Yeah, why don't we go to Janine B and then we'll come back to Luca.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, thank you very much, Commissioner Perez, and thank you all on the committee. I just wanted to add this, I've been living on the Upper East Side for 28 years. I am 63 years old, and I agree with everything that Andy said. Bo, I played with your children, and it's been really incredible what we have created in that area. That area where we play pickleball has been underutilized since I've been living there. They do play basketball, and the kids, play, ride their bicycles, but I think that we're all failing to remember that it's a big park. There's a huge playground there. There's plenty of space for us all to play. And, I was actually thinking that we were going to have four pickleball courts, with what Andy had said, about what Albert has created there. He has opened up people's worlds. I mean, I myself, 28 years I'm living in Manhattan, and I now feel like I'm a real Manhattan, that I actually live on the Upper East Side and I participate in our community. This is all about community. It's all about, I play with 9-year-olds. It's it's all ages. It's children. And Joel, I understand. And I know that when you come down, we always move that court. We always make room for you and your children to play. I've seen you bring your dog down unleashed and run around there, which is not allowed in the park. You know, we're really trying to be respectable to everybody because we love this. This has built an amazing thing to so many people. It's not just because of COVID. I haven't exercised in years. My life is bigger now because of what has been created on the Upper East Side, because this gentleman, Albert, has started this amazing community where we all get along. We all want to play together. My problem is the skateboarders that jump over the barrels without helmets and they can break their heads. Why are kids able, children are able to do that, which is so dangerous. I'm so afraid that I'm going to see somebody hurt themselves. Pickleball, it's a nice activity. It's a nice sport. It's welcoming. People that come visit New York come and play with us. We all greet them. And I just really, it's very upsetting to see that there could be a problem with this because we really do respect the neighborhood. I live in the neighborhood. Most of us live on the Upper East Side. And I say, us adult kids want to play too. And we're all forgetting. Seriously, it's a big park. There's a huge playground that they just redid not that many years ago. It's a beautiful playground for children. We do need, I think, seniors and 9-year-olds, and we all need a playground to play in. It's a healthy thing, and it's going on all over this country. So why shouldn't the Upper East Siders be able to play pickleball outdoors nicely in our playground? You know, I mean, it's really, I ask you all, please, this has done so many wonderful things for all of us. It has opened up our world. It's healthy, it's friendly, and it's community. It's all about community.
Thank you,
there's
Janine.
no fighting. Thank you.
Commissioner Perez has come to us today with specific recommendations on how to balance out the competing uses in the park. So I appreciate that everybody is most are supportive of pickleball, but if you could respond to some of his specific proposals, that would be helpful as well. Next is Eric, and then Luca, and then thank you, Rita, for your patience. And we'll get to you after those two. Thank you. Eric?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Eric. I'm actually a pickleball player here in Brooklyn. And so I just had a question regarding the courts that you were deciding of the three. Because I used to travel to Manhattan to play pickleball. And one of the things I noticed is that there's a lack of like permanent nets. I know like here in Brooklyn, we're fortunate enough to have permanent net courts. So I was wondering, would you guys be willing to put them over there as well? Because there are times where I meet a lot of players that are coming from Manhattan, and I tell them like, why don't you guys play at the Carl Park or JJ Walker or any of those? And some of them always tell me that they don't have a net of their own, and they are pretty expensive. So I was just wanting to know if is that an option to put permanent courts? Because I know how the Central Park one, they wanted to make one of them like a multi-purpose one for like volleyball and all that stuff. But I feel like having like a permanent net court out there would like be beneficial to a lot of players who unfortunately cannot purchase an individual net of their own. And yes, I do know that Albert, the leader, he tends to bring his own nets, but then there are times where like right now in the winter he's unfortunately not there, and so some of the players still want to play, but again they don't have a net of their own, and so yeah, that's just one question that I have for the commissioner to see if is it possible to put actual like permanent net courts like the ones we have here in Brooklyn?
Okay, thank you, Eric. Commissioner Perez, can you answer that? He's on mute.
Okay.
Okay.
So two answers to that. The first one is in this particular space, we can't put in permanent courts because it's a multi-purpose play area. So the site needs to also be used by hockey, which would need the whole area, or if there was an event or whatever it may need be. So the permanent installation of nets would deter other usages. And just along those lines, we even thought about potentially in some areas we're incorporating a fence to separate the different sports. But again, in this case, it wouldn't work because that wouldn't be removable when other usages are needed. Secondly, though, while we can't really put permanent nets in this particular space, part of the plan here is to work with the pickleball players to see if they want to pursue what we call a job box. And we have a storage container agreement that we can pursue and do so. And that way, like Albert or some other folks in the leadership of the group can store nets in that box and access them so that no one has to bring their own net.
I understand.
Just one more thing is the last part of this whole proposal was to help us identify other locations that could be converted to pickleball. And depending on those other options, they could be a co-location. Like, for example, one idea, again, not a rumor and not a formal proposal, but we could add pickleball lines on top of the handball lines, and they could be for both sports in that usage. If there's another area, maybe on 96th Street, that we can identify the surface, and other areas we're looking at, we can make where we can find dedicated pickleball courts that will be pickleball all year round, morning till night. There, we could actually put permanent nets on the courts.
Thank you. The next is Luca, if you can unmute, and Phyllis W, and then Rita.
Hello, hi. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, wonderful. Again, my name is Luca. I am an avid tennis player at John Jay Park, and I'm a little bit concerned. I want to thank everybody for the opportunity here to talk and give voice, especially to tennis players and users of the two walls at the John Jay Park. I am against the idea of transforming that area. And whatever idea is basically an irrational idea based on a really not knowing exactly what's going on at John Jay Park. These, in particular, the area of the handball, the two walls are extremely crowded with kids, and also with tennis players and with volleyball players and soccer players, but mostly kids, and also us tennis players. And I want to remind that on the Upper East Side, the tennis court, John Jay Park, is the only resource that we have, public. This means that pickleball players are going to push out a huge amount of kids and tennis players just grabbing the land and recreating exactly the same situation that is currently going on at Carl Schulz Park. Exactly the same. Now, so I am against, because probably whatever proposal is completely blind of the reality. We live in a very crowded area, and we are respectful of all the games and whatever are the desires of people. But I think that the major problem here is the distinction between private and public. If you want to play soccer, tennis, you can rent a space, a private space, and you pay. Right now, I think the issue here is that the public wants to replace what the private space or the entrepreneurs are not doing, because you can't play pickleball in a space where you, at least around our area. So my concern is that probably there must be a little bit more push from the private side and from entrepreneurs willing to take a particular piece of land, pay, buy, rent, create pickleball courts, and having people going over there, paying and playing pickleball courts. That's the same story for us tennis players. If we want to play at night or when it rains, we have to pay and play tennis an hour. And there won't be any discussions, and especially with kids taking over kids playing. So again, the proposal of occupying or tearing down the two walls at John Jay Park is absurd, is blind, is probably proposed by somebody who has never had an idea or even peeked at John Jay Park, because it's constantly crowded, and especially in the afternoon with kids coming out from the schools, from 2 schools and 3 schools in the area. And this will be another recipe for a disaster. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Luca. We'll go to Phyllis W. and then to Rita Popper.
Also, Felice, there's iPhone 41 who's had his hand up for a while.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Commissioner Perez, for your proposal and for hearing us out. I'm just wondering a couple of things. You mentioned that, you know, the pickleball lines might be a problem to maintain, but I'm curious why they'd be a larger problem to maintain than the basketball court lines are. I mean, those are down, and I haven't heard any complaints about maintaining those. One of the things that I think about is, I mean, there are park rules that say, and we don't complain about, but there are park rules, I think it's 6I, that says you're not supposed to ride a bicycle in a play area, which obviously where the basketball courts and hockey courts and where we're using for pickleball is a play area. That there's so much space in the park where we could make a bicycle area, like up by the bathrooms by 87th Street. There's that whole round circle by the mayor's mansion where you can't plant a single thing because there's so much shade there. That would be a great place to put bicycles. The other thing I wanted to mention, that have we thought, I mean, there are 1,300 pickleball players in Team Reach, that we could do a fundraiser if money is an issue and do like a sports court type surface for not only the basketball, but the pickleball. So that would be zero maintenance required on that type of a surface, which is the surface that most places use to put their sports court. So have we thought about that as an alternative to, quote, painting lines? And I understand what the multiple use, because I love going to watch the movies in the summer in that area. And so I get what you're saying, that we can't have a permanent net up. But if we have a multi-purpose surface that is zero maintenance, and if we can raise funds for that so we don't have to go into your budget, would that be a possibility at all? And again, why would maintaining pickleball lines be any different than maintaining basketball lines?
Sure. So first and foremost, there's no such thing as maintenance-free pavement or coating. Everything has an ability to decay. In some cases, it'll start looking poorly in 1 year. In most cases, it'll start looking poorly in 5 years. That even goes for our major capital renovations. They're made to last at least 15 years, and there's over 400 parks across Manhattan and even more across the city. So it's a matter of prioritizing dollars and cents as it costs to maintain and renovate areas across the city. In terms of the court lines, I want to clarify, what I was saying that was difficult to maintain was the adding unofficial lines that are painted on and then removing them out when they're not being used. That is hard to maintain. We can maintain court lines that we put down because they're supposed to stay there and are static. So when we add 3 courts, that would be there, but we can have 3 courts on some days and 5 courts on other days. And some weeks we take out 2 courts and some weeks we add 3 courts. That's what gets hard to maintain, not the actual permanent lines that would be added for those courts. And then in terms of the cost, you're right. I looked at it myself this morning. Even like in the basketball area, there's like almost a tree root that's protruding and there's a bunch of cracks all over the area. We are in current conversations with elected officials to see if it's something that we can address through a capital process. And just to give you a sense, you know, there's different approaches that can be done for addressing cracked surfaces. We could do something on the shorter and on the short-term end that's lower cost and just do a resurfacing and repainting, and that could cost upwards of $150,000 to $200,000. Or if we do a completely resurfacing, like do it right and have a brand new surface, that could cost over $1 million to redo through the construction process. So it's not just a couple of quarters under the couch that we put together. It has to be a thoughtful process that we incorporate our elected officials and have existing dollars through both the capital side or even work with someone in the private sector that might be able to help us refurbish it through a large donation. But I just want to make sure that folks know it's a little more complicated than just painting.
Thank you, Commissioner. We'll go to iPhone 41.
And just please identify yourself.
I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. And sorry, this is David Sparrow. I just really wanted to say briefly that this community that Albert has created is the greatest thing that's happened in the 24 years that I've lived on the Upper East Side. It is a community from kids in their, from 8-year-olds who are maybe starting in the game up into people in their 70s and 80s, and in between, every age in between, and everybody has a great time. Everybody gets along. Everybody is inclusive, and don't let anybody tell you otherwise, because this community, I mean, I've met more people playing in the last 5 months than I have in those 24 years leading up to this on the Upper East Side. I mean, as well as being great exercise and an incredibly fun, addictive activity, it's also just been a great experience for me personally. And I think for, a lot of other people, there's a very common goal. Everybody's out there to have fun, to exercise, to enjoy the game, to hang around other people who enjoy and appreciate the game. And also don't let anybody tell you that it's not an accommodating and accepting group. There have perhaps been exceptions, but in general, everybody does accommodate when other people come and request space. And in fact, we are not the antagonists. There is one antagonist who comes to the park regularly, and you heard from him earlier this evening, and he comes looking and sparks conflict. And the bottom line is, this is a park for everybody, and nobody's trying to take the park away from anybody, but we deserve our space just as he deserves his space. But there is room enough for everybody to exist in Carl Schurz Park, and there is room for 3, if not more, pickleball courts.
Thank you, David.
Thanks.
We'll go to Rita, who's been waiting patiently, and then to Matt Goldberg.
Can I just quickly say, Felice, if members of the public can refrain from maybe calling out other individuals, even by implication. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Rita.
Hello, Commissioner Perez. It is a pleasure to meet you. As it is a pleasure to work with both Judy and Felice. They are formidable people. I have been a friend of Rupert Park for many, many years, and I was told that if we want to renovate the park to raise some money, I did raise $8.9 million. And then found that Julie Menon gave us $4 million more, got a comfort station. I would like you to know that I would be thrilled if you put a pickleball court in Rupert Park. I know it's a small park. It's only about an acre of land, but it does abut a closed street so that we take care of all the bicycle riders. They can ride up and down the street and not worry about vehicular traffic. So I hesitate because I'm looking forward to a shovel in the ground in the fall of 23, and I hope this won't delay it. But if we're able to fit it in, it will be worth the delay. We will be the smallest acre in New York City that appeals to an entire family from infant to as old as they can get to the park. So thank you very much. And I hope we can work on Rupert Park together. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita, for your thoughtful comments. Matt? You're still on mute, or we can't hear you. We can't hear you.
Check and see if you have like a Bluetooth microphone or something like that connected to your computer. That may just be in another room. Otherwise, try leaving and coming back, and that may solve the problem. Try again.
While Matt's trying to solve his problem, I'd like to ask the commissioner a few questions. One of the issues you brought up was a hockey team coming up for a short period of time while their field was being repaired. Could they not jointly use the 96th Street hockey field at first when they come up, Commissioner?
So we're still in discussions with them. We're not sure if they will still actually need to be displaced by the construction down at Tompkins Square Park. But if it is the case, as I understand it, they would only need it for a few hours on Sunday. And we're still in discussion with them on what that could look like. And I don't know if we still have our recreation folks from Ken Conyers and Orlando, or even Steve, who may have more details to add to that.
Well, I would just suggest, since there is they are playing hockey there, that would seem the logical place to put them if they need someplace temporarily. Just keep that in the back of your mind.
Hi, I'm just Orlando, by the way. I'm still here, Commissioner Perez. So the issue with that park is the 96th Street is just too small for them. They're more of an adult group who need a larger space. So we have offered it to them before, and we're still in discussions with them, like the commissioner has stated, but I don't think it would be an issue for this spring, summer. But we will look into alternative options, and we've offered even other locations like William Passanante to them. So it's not set in stone that Carl Schwartz would be the ideal replacement for them, but it does not look like it would be something that would impact this year, at least for spring, summer.
Thank you. You asked for other locations. The handball courts at 24 Sycamores Park, I know they are used by tennis people who practice their tennis there, but they're not used all the time. So if we could have a time for pickleball and there could be signage with a time when they could be used for handball, that might be another location. I also like your 96th Street on the other side in District 11. I'm sure that the people, if you were able to correct the surface, I'm sure that the people from Board 8 would cross the street and play there as well, especially if the wait time was less than at Carl Schurz. When do you, this proposal that you've given us for the 3 courts and enlarging the space in the middle, when do you think that you will actually do this work on call shores? And also, where is the location for the job box? Where in call shores were you going to put that? And what's the timing on this?
Sure. So in terms of the timing, like I mentioned, I wanted to make sure to have a conversation here and hopefully have some buy-in from the community. I don't know if your team was interested in discussing it and submitting a resolution in support of the proposal. That would help us in our determination on next steps. In terms of the timing, it would also be dependent on our discussions as they're taking place regarding renovations of the surface. If it's a simple, just adding lines, that could be done in a matter of days or weeks. If it's a matter of a more intricate resurfacing, that would be weather dependent because the material has to dry and be done in temperatures that are warmer than 45 degrees in order for it to settle appropriately. So I think we'd have to circle back on the timeline because it's dependent on whether it's a simple just adding square boxes. We can do that easily. If it's a repainting, it's weather dependent. And if it's a full renovation and reconstruction, we all know those could take a little longer.
Right, and if it is a full renovation, has our council member, has somebody committed the money to do this work?
These are still early discussions. We're now starting to engage with our council members regarding council funding for the upcoming fiscal year.
Right.
So there are no commitments as of yet, but we plan to discuss and see if there's interest in supporting it with capital dollars as well.
Okay. Felice, what do you want to do about a resolution since the commissioner would like one?
Well, we have two more comments left. So if we could just hear from Matt to see if he has his technical issues fixed, and then Mubin wants to make a comment. No, we still can't hear you.
Matt, maybe you want to chat what you have to say to Kevin, and then he could make the comment on your behalf.
Okay, Mubin.
Good evening, everyone. Hello, Judy and Felice. Very nice to see you again. I missed the last month's meeting, so it's nice to see everyone again. Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you, Julie and Rebecca, for all your comments. I just had a quick question. I want to again applaud Rita for always championing Rupert Park, and we really, really appreciate her patronage. I thought I heard Rita say that we might be breaking ground in the fall. Is that a firm date for the renovation for Rupert Park, or is that still up in the air?
We're going to have, Felice and I are in discussion with Steve Simon, and there will be another presentation on Rupert. We just can't tell you tonight when it's going to be. And at that time, these questions will be answered, Mubin.
Okay, so relating to the issue about a resolution, if you want to move forward on that. The proposal is to move to set up 3 pickleball courts, move it to the south side of the park, opposite the basketball court, to have less of a space between courts, and that to limit the hours in which pickleball could be played if there is other permitted uses occupying the park at that time. Do I have that correct, or have I missed something?
I don't want to tell you anything, but but if you want to include something about having a discussion about exploring additional spaces in the district, we want to continue that pursuit.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that's very important. And exploring additional space elsewhere in Community District 8.
Do the community board members who are on this meeting support the resolution? Does someone want to suggest that as a resolution? So I see Irma's hand is up.
Do we have a second?
Sahar seconds that. As does Sharon Pope Marshall. Do we want to vote on it?
Call the
Yeah, or I should say, is there anyone opposed or not voting for cause?
Somebody has to call the question, as Judy was just.
Call the
indicating.
question.
So Judy's called the question. Sahar has her hand up. Sahar.
So she's seconding it. Okay.
Oh, okay. So is there anybody voting no or not voting for cause? I apologize for my dog. Seeing no hands.
Okay. Rita, Felice, just let me read the names off. It's Felice, Judy, Barry, Irma, Sahar, Barbara, Rita, and Sharon. Did I miss anybody? Kevin?
No, I think.
Did you say Irma? Did you say Irma?
Yes, I have Irma.
Yeah. Can you just read it top to bottom just one more time, just in case. So
Okay.
that's Irma, Felice, Judith, Barry, Rita, Sahar, Sharon. Did I miss anyone?
Barbara.
I'm not sure.
Here, if I don't know if
No,
she's
Barbara
still here.
left. She's not here
Barbara
anymore.
left. Okay.
Okay. So the vote passage. We'll write out a more formal resolution in support of this. If folks have suggestions about other places in the district that would be appropriate for pickleball, or concerns about other places putting pickleball, I urge them to, you can reach out to the community board and we can forward that information, or Commissioner Perez's contact information is put in the chat and you can reach out to Commissioner Perez. Thank you so much. We really appreciate your thoughtfulness on this very difficult and challenging issue. Clearly, a lot of time and thought has gone into this, and we appreciate your efforts. I see that Steve Simon has his hand up. Can we unmute Steve?
Steve,
go ahead.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I wonder whether I might be allowed to respond to Mubin. I really don't want anybody to leave this meeting thinking that we're going to break ground at Rupert Park in the fall. The design work is not scheduled to be completed until the end of June, and then we go into a procurement phase where the project goes out for bid, and that normally runs at least 9 months or so. And so assuming that we get a good bid, we're probably not going to break ground at Rupert until the spring of next year. So Rita was jumping the gun. She'll have to be a little more patient, and we should be able to start construction next spring. And Judy, when we come back to you, the presentation that we would be making about Rupert is not about the park project per se. It would be about the comfort station, which, as you know, is a separate project.
correct, but you will be able to also answer at that time questions about Rupert that may come up.
Well, absolutely. And we would be able to answer questions about Rupert on any occasion and at any meeting that you should invite us to.
Okay, well, we want to say thank you very much to the commissioner, to you, Steve, and to the rest of the park staff for spending this time with us this evening. We really appreciate it.
Well, one last thing, Judy, I want to read out the message that Matt sent me, Matt Goldberg, before, who couldn't get his mic to work, if that's okay.
Oh, yes, go ahead.
I'm an avid tennis player and play at John Jay Park. Just hope there's a better resolution than tearing down the walls at John Jay. The walls are used for all tennis levels, baseball players, volleyball, and other sport activities. It's a great place for beginner players of all sports to play because it keeps the ball in a contained place. The walls are not underutilized. Hope there's a better budget conscious place to add pickleballers.
Steve,
Can I just assure him and others that no one has ever suggested taking down both of the handball walls at John Jay. The only suggestion we ever received was to perhaps take down one of them, but never to take down both of them.
And Steve, sometime in the future months, you'll probably be coming back to us to give us an update on John Jay. Is that correct?
Judy, you are correct.
Okay, so everybody watch your agendas. So if this item is important to you, please, we invite you to attend that meeting. And again, thank you to the Parks Department for your time.
All right.
Just
All right.
Judy, Rita has her hand up one more time. If we could just go back to Rita.
I just wanted to say thank you, Steve, for the correction. Maybe I'm just praying too fast, but
Well, okay, well, pray a little slower, and I promise you, as soon as we have a groundbreaking date, you will be the first one to find out.
thank you. I will go to any wall that you want.
Okay. All right. Very good.
And pray for anything that will speed this up. Thank you, Steve, as always.
All right, take care.
Now, we're not finished with parks yet. We have Sheena Kaufman, our district manager for Community District 8, who is going to give us a report and an update. Kevin, can you unmute her?
Yeah, I got it. You can hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good evening, everyone. So I'll just give you an update about, I know you spoke with Steve earlier about moving the dog run from from Rubric down. So currently I'm in talks of getting the material that we need to fence off the area so we can have that area exclusively for the dogs, and hope to get rid of this the complaints that's coming through. I just want to remind everybody that Honey Locust Park on February 28th, Tuesday, February 28th at 1 p.m. we're going to have the ribbon cutting, and great presentation on tonight about Carl Schultz and pickleball. Commissioner, thanks a lot. It's great info. And anybody else have any questions or concerns?
Well, Sheen, I just want you to make it clear that everyone is invited to the ribbon cutting at Honey Locust. It's open to the whole community. We will be sending a flyer to the community board and asking that you pass the word. And we hope that we get a good turnout. This is a park. It took a number of years for us to recapture this park, so to speak, after it was being used as a construction staging area. And now it's been nicely redesigned, renovated, and is now open to the public. And we would like to be able to celebrate this new park space with members of the community board.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Steve. We will be there with them.
Okay, I expect you to bring Barry.
I absolutely will.
Okay, very good. Don't come without him.
Okay.
And we have two hands up. Actually three. Anthony Friedman, then Mubin, and then Cheryl.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I want to thank Perez, Ms. Sirai, everyone. I had a quick question. Is there any way to post a link, or where should we look for people interested in John Jay? I'm an avid tennis player, for that meeting. I know you mentioned the agenda.
Yes,
I'm relatively new.
when they will be coming back to the community board, and you go to CB8M.com and a calendar comes up, and we usually meet on the second Thursday of the month, and you can look at the calendar every month and see the items on the agenda. And while you mention that, I will tell you that next month, we're going to have a review by Hospital for Special Surgery of their Kellen Tower and all the work on the piece of the Esplanade that they're doing. So the calendar will tell you, and as soon as we know, we will list it.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Next, Mubin and then Cheryl.
I really didn't have another question, but I was muted before I could just thank Judy and Steve for the responses. And the ribbon cutting at this park that you mentioned, Honey something park. Where is that park? Is that the one near Sutton
Honey
Place?
Locust. Yeah, Honey Locust is on 59th Street, right
59th.
next to the bridge between
Oh.
First Avenue and the turn where you go mid-block, where you go up onto the 59th Street Bridge.
I see. Thank you. I know exactly where it is. It's very close to where my mother lives. So that's where they used to also plant foliage for butterflies, right?
Well, they haven't done anything there in a lot of years. So we'll see what happens in the spring, and we're trying to put a Friends of group together.
Thank you so much. Everybody have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you. Rita and then Gary Schechter.
Gina, what did you say about moving the dog park, the dog run in Rupert Park? Because tonight, when I came in at 5 o'clock, there were dogs all over the park. So, and I know what you've been trying to do, but let me tell you, it's not working.
We're gonna, because we were getting complaints about the upper part of where it's currently at, about the dogs making loud noise when visiting the park all day long. We thought that, moving it where the dog run is going to be once the park is renovated, we're gonna start getting that behavior in now. So we're gonna move it down towards the avenue, planted area, so that people can get used to that, and we're gonna close off that other area, so no dogs will be allowed into. And we're gonna put signage. We're gonna move everything that's up there all the way down there, but we're gonna keep that fence up. But we're going to order some more fence to put around the area to make it noticeable that this is the dog area that you should be utilizing.
So right now,
In hopes that it works.
right now it's on 91st Street, and you're going to move it to the corner of 90th Street and 2nd Avenue?
No, we're gonna move it down to the corner of 91st Street and 2nd Avenue.
Okay.
It's in the upper level right now.
Where it was.
So we're gonna move it down. Right. And that's where it's going to be. That's where once the park is renovated, that's where the dog run is going to be. So we're just going to get people used to where it's going to be, and hopefully it'll cut down the noise that the residents are, going through right now. A few residents that are complaining that the dog walks all night and they
All
can't
night.
rest and they can't sleep.
They're
Right.
right. They are right. They are not speaking with forked tongue. They are speaking correctly.
So we're gonna see if this helps, and once it's done, just let me know if it helps.
That's where it was originally, right?
Yes, yes, that's where it was. So we're gonna try to see if this works. We're doing the things to try. Me too. I do. I hope it works too.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks. Gary and then Cheryl.
Hi, just a quick question. Have they considered Roosevelt Island?
For pickleball?
Yeah. I don't know if
Assemblymember Seawright put in the chat earlier, I'm not sure if everyone saw that in March, pickleball court on Roosevelt Island will be opening, and that they're exploring additional space on the island for pickleball courts.
Okay, thank you.
Cheryl? Can we unmute Cheryl and then Clara?
Hi, My family and I are avid tennis players at John Jay Park, and last month you guys mentioned you're going to resurface John Jay. Is there any update on that? And the other question is, in particular to resurfacing, is it possible, because it's a large space, is it possible if when you resurface, if you do it in specific segments, not all at once, so the whole park is not closed for a lengthy period of time all at once?
Cheryl, I'll repeat what I've said several times. Please watch the CB8M.com, the calendar for the Parks Night, the second Thursday, and you'll see when we have Parks Department coming back, giving us an update on John Jay Park.
Okay, someone mentioned that I should, on the chat, that I should, your administration said I should mention it now, but okay.
Okay, well, we've mentioned it several times. I'll mention it again. I hope this is the last time.
Well,
Okay, thank you.
Judy, I'm gonna follow up on that suggestion and see whether or not it's possible to do maybe half of the multi-purpose play area at a time, so that we can keep maybe half of it open. I'll see if that's feasible.
Okay, but when you do come back to us, we'd like a report on everything that you are doing there at the time. You
Of
know.
course. Yes, but I'm gonna see whether Cheryl's suggestion is possible.
Okay, thank you very much, Cheryl. I think that's it. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
You have
Clara Vasquez is the raised her hand.
Oh, I don't see her. I'm sorry, Clara. Clara, go ahead.
Mute. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. Anyway, I discovered Carl, I've been living in the neighborhood for over 40 years, and I have never met so many people who have become like family since this summer at Carl Schutz Park. And the other thing I wanted to point out, that I know there is a sign there. I've gone early in the morning to play pickleball there. And for some reason, the dogs, they bring dogs there and they unleash them early in the morning. And I've been peed on a couple of times. I've been able to shoo away a couple of times, but my coat has been peed on, my bag has been peed on. And there's a sign that they should be leashed. And then the people who have the dogs get very indignant that I should be there, that it's okay for them to pee on me.
Sheila, don't we have a PEP officer?
Yeah, I'm sorry, what, Clara,
Yes.
what time is it happening?
Oh, this is happening early in the morning. Like I've been there like at 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning.
All right.
And there's everybody unites there with their unleashed dogs.
All right, we'll get a PEP officer over there.
Okay.
We're having calls come and speak to us in May, but isn't the Conservancy paying for a PEP officer?
No,
Not anymore?
No, not for a number of years, but we should be able to get somebody over there.
Okay, thank you, Steve.
Is this the multi-purpose play area or is it another part of the park?
Well, it's where she's playing pickleball, right?
Yep.
It's in the multi-purpose play area, I believe.
Okay.
And since we have 2 dog runs in this park, nobody anywhere else in that park should be running their dogs off leash.
Thank you. Rita?
I can guarantee you Rita is not running her dogs off leash.
No, motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second. Judy, second.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. We are adjourned. Have a great evening.
All right,
We'll see
thank
you next month.